and get that information for yourself. Now, when you're going to put your membrane down onto a wood surface, there's two things that you need. You need to add just a little bit more water to it, and you need to wet the plywood first, okay? You want to actually put a little moisture into the wood, open up the pores, right? And then help to encourage that thin set to get on there and not dry out too fast. It's going to dry out super fast because all that moisture is going to get sucked into the wood anyway. But during the installation, you want to avoid a glaze over. So when you put thin set on the floor, it's instantly in contact with the air. By the time you go from one end of the room to the other, the initial stuff is starting to glaze over, okay? And it won't bond very well. So by adding a little extra water, it gives you a little bit more workability, and it's easier to push through the fleece. So here's the test. This is the thin set we want to use when we're putting our membrane down. So we're going to do the finger test. I drag it through the cement, okay? And it closes up right away. That's the kind of consistency that you're looking for putting in the membrane. Compared to when you're putting your tile on, when you do a finger drag, it'll hold its shape. And that's because we're trying to create ridges that get collapsed by the tile during installation to get 100% bond, or as close as we can, because most tile is in a wet area, and that's the gold standard, okay? So here's the installation of membranes, guys. It's really simple. We just roll them out, and then we're gonna take our scissors, and then we're gonna just cut our length to order. Now, I'm not in an actual bathroom today. We created a little studio in the living room for the purpose of the examination. Here we go. Now, what you do in this environment is you always roll up the membrane. We're not soaking the water. We're dampening the floor. In my experience, one of the leading causes of tile failure is dust. There we go. We're going to comb this out to the same thickness, consistency. In theory, your floors should be nice and flat at this point. Unlevel floors fail, period. Step one. Hey. Roll it out. Now, when we first started working with Schluter years ago, they had a serious problem with the rollback. So the product would just keep rolling backwards all the time. It was so bad that we actually had to work way too hard to install the membrane. Now this is just to set it in place, okay? Truth is, proper installation requires one more step. I'm gonna show you that in a second. Here we go. That's pretty much it, guys. Now, so you saw me install this with one hand, right? And that's going to be honest with you, that's the industry standard for almost everybody installing the membrane. They don't go through the effort it takes to do it right. And you see all this area where you can see the orange right through. Okay, that's not 100% bond. Those are areas where it's failing. All these little lines here, that's where the thin set is not in contact with the fleece. So the way you do it properly, and you know, you might as well be like an Olympic athlete to pull this off. You've got to put both hands on this thing, and you got to put your weight on here. Okay? Now, I'll tell you something as an installer. That'll send you home for lunch and be done for the day. Now, we have a much better adhesion there. That is what we were looking for. So, as a homeowner, you're going to go buy a product. You can buy a product and go through that bloody workout, or you can buy a $250 tool that solves the same issue. All right, time for our next test. And not so much a test as an experiment on the application. And that here goes. We've got our thin set. It's a little thicker for the tile application. So I'm going to use a bucket scoop, okay? I'm going to show you the process for installing this product. Now, because this is a new generation of the Ditra, and they've rounded out their corner just a little bit here, the assumption is they aren't going to have as bad of a problem as they used to. So we go with the flat side of our trowel, all right? The Ditra manual says to force it in the holes. Now, I just did a pass. You'll notice that there's pull away from the corners. All right? So, to solve a pull away, you got to come back a different direction. but now this direction has pull away. So now I got to come back this direction to fix that problem. All right? The integrity of the mat is in how well these dimples are filled. So Schluter suggests that you fill them, confirm that they're filled. That's an installation I'd be happy with. Then you take out your thin set when you're ready to tile, and then you trowel a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch line. Okay? Now that is a 1/2 inch line. The more you stand up, the more true it is. Okay? This is a collapsible ridge. So you set your tile on there. What happens is you set a tile and you push it and you get that 100% coverage underneath the tile. Okay? That's the system.